The alarm didn't go off that Tuesday morning in March, but it didn't matter. I was already awake, staring at the water-stained ceiling of my one-bedroom apartment, watching the shadows from the streetlight outside create patterns in the darkness. My chest felt tight, the kind of tightness that made me think about the cardiologist's warning from 6 months ago. Mr. Reeves, your blood pressure is dangerously high. You're looking at a serious cardiac event if you don't make changes. Reduce stress, exercise, sleep more than 5 hours a night. I'd nodded, taken the prescription, and gone right back to working 70-hour weeks at Marcus's cafe chain. Because that's what I did. That's what I'd been doing for 22 years. 22 years. I rolled out of bed at 4:15 a.m., my knees protesting like they always did now. 56 years old, and my body felt like it belonged to someone 20 years older. I showered in the cramped bathroom where the grout had gone gray and the shower head leaked, then dressed in the same outfit I'd worn for a decade. Khaki pants, white button-down shirt, the company-issued fleece vest with Marcus's Cafe, Director of Operations, embroidered over the breast pocket. The vest used to make me proud. Now it just felt heavy. I made coffee in my cheap Mr. Coffee machine. Not even decent coffee, just grocery store grounds, because the irony of working for a cafe chain and drinking terrible coffee at home wasn't lost on me. I just couldn't afford the good stuff we served. Not on my salary. Not with child support payments to Sarah in Portland and rent and the car payment on the 12-year-old Camry that kept threatening to die. Sarah. I hadn't spoken to her in 3 weeks. She'd called on my birthday, a perfunctory happy birthday, hope you're well, that felt more like obligation than affection. Emma and Jake, my kids, were in college now. Emma was 21, Jake 19. They called on holidays. Sometimes. I'd missed so much of their lives. Dance recitals when Emma was 7, Jake's championship baseball game when he was 13, Christmas mornings, summer vacations, all sacrificed on the altar of building someone else's dream. But we were a team, Marcus and me, partners in all but name. That's what he'd always said. Dan, you're the backbone of this operation. I couldn't do any of this without you. I'd believed him. God help me, I'd believed every word. The bus ride to the flagship location took 40 minutes. I'd sold my car 2 weeks ago, needed the cash. The old Camry had fetched $2,800, and I'd bought a beat-up Honda Civic from 1998 for $1,200. The difference was supposed to last me through the month, but rent was due in 5 days, and I was still $400 short. I'd figure it out. I always did. The cafe sat on the corner of 7th and Madison, the original location. I still remembered the first day we'd opened, back in 2003. Marcus had been 38 then, me 34. He'd just left his corporate job at an investment firm, cashed out his 401k, and decided he wanted to do something real. His word. Something with his hands. Something that mattered. Coffee brings people together, Dan, he'd said, standing in the empty storefront that smelled like sawdust and fresh paint. It's community. It's connection. We're not just selling beverages. We're selling moments. Memories. He'd been right in those early days. It was magical. We'd open at 5:30 a.m. to catch the morning commuters. Marcus would work the espresso machine. I'd handle the pastry case and register. We'd learn people's names, their orders, their stories. Mrs. Chen, who liked a double-shot latte with 2 pumps of vanilla. Derek, the lawyer, who always got a black coffee and a blueberry muffin. Sarah, not my ex-wife, different Sarah, who came in every Tuesday and Thursday after her night shifts as an ER nurse. We knew them all, cared about them all, and the cafe thrived. Within 2 years, we opened a second location, then a third. Marcus brought me on full-time as operations manager, then director of operations when we hit 8 locations. By year 15, we had 16 cafes across Washington, Oregon, and Northern California. I'd opened each one, trained each manager, negotiated every lease, sourced the suppliers, developed the training manuals, created the scheduling systems, implemented the quality controls that made Marcus's Cafe known for consistency. Whether you walked into our Seattle location or our San Francisco outpost, you got the same excellent experience. Marcus handled the money and the vision. I handled everything else. 70-hour weeks became normal, then 80 hours during expansion phases. I'd leave my apartment at 4 a.m., get home at 8 p.m., eat something from a drive-thru, collapse into bed, and do it again. Weekends were for inventory and paperwork. Holidays were our busiest times. Couldn't take those off. My marriage had lasted 9 years before Sarah finally had enough. I feel like a single parent, Dan, she'd said, crying at the kitchen table while I packed for a trip to scout locations in Portland. The kids barely know you. I barely know you. You're married to that job, not to me. I'm building our future, I'd protested. This is for us, for the kids' college funds. For what? Some imaginary later that never comes? I need you now. We need you now. But I didn't listen. Couldn't listen. Marcus needed me. The company needed me. We were growing, expanding, succeeding. How could I step back from that? Sarah filed for divorce when Emma was 12 and Jake was 10. She got primary custody and moved to Portland for a job opportunity. I got weekends when I could make it, which turned out to be about once a month, then once every 2 months, then holidays only. Emma had stopped asking when I'd visit by the time she was 16. Jake stopped at 14, and I kept working, kept building, kept telling myself it would all be worth it. I unlocked the flagship location at 4:45 a.m., disabled the alarm, and started my routine. Check the espresso machines, clean the group heads, calibrate the grinders, verify the pastry delivery. They were late again. I'd need to call the supplier. Review the schedule. 2 call-outs already. I'd need to shuffle the shifts. Start the batch brew. Count the register. Check the bathroom supplies. The work was meditative, familiar. These were my cafés, my systems, my life's work made tangible in stainless steel counters and the hiss of steam wands. By 5:15, the opening crew arrived. Jamie, who'd been with us for 8 years. Marcus, a college student, no relation to the owner, confusingly. Bethany, a single mom who always took the early shift so she could be home when her kids got out of school. "Morning, Dan," Jamie said, tying on her apron. "You look tired. You okay?" "Fine. Just didn't sleep well." "You never sleep well," she said pointedly. "When's the last time you took a vacation?" I couldn't remember. Literally couldn't remember. 5 years? 7? "I'll take one soon," I lied. We opened at 5:30 to the usual rush of regulars. I helped at the register while Jamie ran the bar. The familiar rhythm took over. Greet, take order, ring up, make change, call out drinks. The cafe filled with the sounds I loved, the espresso machine's rhythmic pumping, the milk frother's high-pitched squeal, the gentle murmur of conversation, the clink of ceramic cups. This was home, more than my apartment, more than anywhere else. This was where I belonged. At 8:30, during the post-rush lull, my phone buzzed, a text from Marcus. "Dan, need to see you at HQ this morning, 10:30, important." My stomach dropped. Marcus never summoned me to headquarters. We had our weekly meetings on Thursdays at the flagship. If he needed something, he called. He didn't text formal summons. I looked around the cafe. Customers at the tables, working on laptops or reading newspapers, the espresso machine gleaming. The pastry case perfectly arranged, everything in its place, everything except the sudden, cold fear in my chest. The headquarters building was downtown, a modern glass tower that always felt too corporate for a cafe chain. Marcus had insisted on it 3 years ago when we restructured. "We need to look professional for investors," he'd said. "We're not a mom-and-pop operation anymore, Dan. We're a real company." I'd found the building, negotiated the lease, set up the offices. Of course I had. I took the elevator to the 7th floor, nodded at Cheryl, the receptionist. She'd been with us for 4 years, hired by me, and walked past the conference rooms to Marcus's corner office. The door was open. He was at his desk, looking at his computer. Vanessa, his daughter, sat in one of the visitor chairs. She joined the company 5 years ago, fresh from business school, full of buzzwords and spreadsheets and consultants. She'd never worked a cafe shift in her life. "Dan, come in," Marcus said without looking up. "Close the door." I did, my hands suddenly cold. Vanessa didn't make eye contact. "Sit down," Marcus said, finally looking at me. His expression was flat, professional. The face he used with vendors he was about to fire. Oh, God. "Marcus, what's going on?" He leaned back in his chair, steepled his fingers. The gesture of a man who'd rehearsed this conversation. "Dan, you've been with us a long time. 22 years. You've done excellent work. You helped build this company from literally nothing." Past tense. He was using past tense. "But the company is evolving. We're at a different stage now. We need different skill sets, different energy. Vanessa and the board have been conducting a strategic review, and we've determined that we need to make some organizational changes." "Organizational changes," I repeated, my voice flat. "We're bringing in new leadership at the operations level. Someone with fresh perspectives, innovative thinking. We need to appeal to younger demographics, implement new technologies, streamline processes." "I've implemented every process we have," I interrupted. "I built those systems." "And they were great for where we were," Vanessa said, speaking for the first time. Her voice had that patronizing tone of someone half my age explaining why I was obsolete. "But we need to think bigger now. cloud-based operations management, AI-driven scheduling, social media integration. These are areas where we need someone who's more digitally native. Digitally native. She meant young. I can learn new systems, I said, hating the pleading note in my voice. I've adapted to every change we've implemented. Remember when we went from paper schedules to digital? I learned that. When we switched POS systems, I trained everyone. Dan, Marcus cut me off gently, too gently. This isn't about what you can or can't do. It's about what's best for the company's future. We need to make this change. The room seemed to tilt. You're firing me. We're transitioning you out, Vanessa said, restructuring the position. You're firing me, I repeated, looking at Marcus. After 22 years, after everything I've done, everything I've sacrificed. Marcus had the decency to look uncomfortable. We're offering a severance package. 2 weeks for every year of service, as per your original employment contract. That's 44 weeks of salary, plus accumulated vacation time. Looks like you have about 6 weeks accrued. Because I'd never taken a vacation, never taken a sick day, never missed a shift. Who's replacing me? We've brought in a consultant, Vanessa said. Trevor Singh. He has an excellent background, worked with several tech startups in the food service space, very innovative. He's 29 and brings a lot of energy. 29? I was being replaced by someone young enough to be my son. Does he know how to pull an espresso shot? I asked bitterly. He doesn't need to, Vanessa said coolly. He's not going to be working in the cafés. He's going to be optimizing operations from a strategic level. The cafés are the operations. You can't optimize what you don't understand. Dan. Marcus's voice was firm now. This decision has been made. You can make this transition smooth and professional, or you can make it difficult. But either way, it's happening. Your employment is terminated effective today. Security will escort you to collect your personal items from the flagship location. Security, like I was a threat, like I might sabotage something. I stood up slowly, my legs unsteady. I gave you everything, Marcus. My marriage, my relationship with my kids, my health, everything. And we're grateful, he said, but his eyes were already back on his computer screen. Cheryl has the severance paperwork ready for you to sign. HR will process your final check by Friday. I looked at Vanessa. She was scrolling through her phone, already done with me. I looked at Marcus, the man I'd considered my partner, my friend, the man I'd built an empire for. He didn't look up again. The walk from headquarters to the flagship location was a blur. I was supposed to wait for security, but I left. What were they going to do? Fire me twice? The morning shift crew was puzzled when I walked in and started packing my things from the back office. Dan, what's happening? Jamie asked, following me. I've been let go, I said, pulling open desk drawers, tossing items into a cardboard box. Pens, notepads. The photo of Emma and Jake from 10 years ago. Emma in her soccer uniform, Jake holding his Little League trophy. Both of them smiling at the camera, not at me, because I'd been working that day and Sarah had sent me the photo afterward. What? No, that's insane. You can't be fired. You're the company. Apparently not anymore. I found the rosary beads my grandmother had given me, kept them in my drawer for luck. White plastic beads, worn smooth from her fingers. She'd carried them through Mass every Sunday for 40 years. Grandma Betty. She'd believed in me so completely. Saved up her seamstress money to give me a start in life. I wondered what she'd think of me now. This is wrong, Jamie said, her voice rising. You built these cafés. Every single one. Does Marcus know? It was Marcus's decision. But why? What did you do? I got old. The severance check arrived 5 days later. 44 weeks at my salary of $67,000 annually, which worked out to about $56,700 before taxes. After taxes, around $38,000, for 22 years of my life. I deposited it, then watched it drain away over the next 3 months. Rent, $400 a month. Car payment, $280. Insurance, $320. Child support, $100. I was already 2 months behind. Utilities, $150. Food, $300 if I was careful. Gas, $120. Phone, $75. Total monthly expenses, $3,745. The severance would last about 10 months if nothing went wrong, less if I had to pay to catch up on child support arrears. I applied to every cafe manager position in the city, then every restaurant management position, then retail management, then warehouse supervisor jobs. Nobody wanted a 56-year-old ex-manager. "We're looking for someone who can grow with the position," they'd say. "Your salary expectations are above our range," they'd say. "We've decided to go with another candidate," they'd say. Translation: "You're too old. You cost too much. You're going to retire or die soon, and we want someone we can exploit for decades." By June, the severance was half gone. I'd burned through my savings to catch up on child support. Couldn't let Sarah and the kids suffer for my situation. I sold my furniture, traded my apartment for a studio in a building where the elevator only worked 3 days a week, sold my car, and bought a 20-year-old Honda that coughed black smoke. I lost 23 pounds, stopped buying coffee, started rationing meals to one a day, applied to grocery store positions, gas stations, security guard jobs, anything. Got rejected from a gas station attendant position, too qualified. A grocery store told me they'd found someone who fits the team culture better. The security company said I didn't meet their physical fitness requirements. I was 56, broke, and unemployable. On a Tuesday in late June, I stared at an eviction notice taped to my studio apartment door. 3 days to pay $1,400 or be forcibly removed. My bank account had $120.48 in it. My next child support payment was due in a week. My phone was about to be shut off. I sat on the floor of my empty apartment, no furniture left to sell, and cried for the first time since Sarah left. 22 years, 70-hour weeks, sacrificed everything for this. I was going through the shoebox where I kept important documents: birth certificate, social security card, divorce papers, the kids' birth certificates, looking for anything that might help. Maybe there was an old savings bond I'd forgotten about, a tax refund I'd missed. Anything. That's when I found it. A weathered savings account passbook from First National Bank, the kind they don't make anymore. A small blue booklet with lined pages for recording transactions. I opened it, and my grandmother's handwriting stared back at me, careful and precise. Daniel James Reeves. Account opened March 15, 1987. Initial deposit, $300. Memory hit me like a wave. I was 9 years old, 3rd grade. Grandma Betty had picked me up from school on a Friday, holding my hand as we walked 3 blocks to the bank. She was wearing her good dress, the navy blue one she wore to church on Sundays, and she'd curled her hair. "Today's a special day, Danny," she'd said in her soft voice, the one that always smelled like the lavender sachets she kept in her dresser. "We're going to invest in your future." The bank had seemed enormous to 9-year-old me. Marble floors and high ceilings and people in suits walking purposefully. We'd waited in line, Grandma holding my hand tight, her palms rough from years of seamstress work. When we reached the teller, Grandma had lifted me up a little so I could see over the counter. "I'd like to open a savings account for my grandson," she'd said proudly. "Daniel Reeves. It's for his future." The teller, a young woman with kind eyes, had smiled. "That's wonderful. We have several options. For young people, we offer our Youth Builder account, which includes an automatic investment program." I didn't remember the details of that conversation. I'd been 9, more interested in the jar of lollipops on the counter, but I remembered signing my name in shaky cursive. Remembered Grandma handing over an envelope with cash. $300, which seemed like $1 million to me. "This is your future fund, sweetheart," Grandma had said afterward, taking me for ice cream to celebrate. Her weathered hands, permanently pricked with needle marks, calloused from fabric and thread, had cupped my face. "Even when I'm gone, this will be here. This is my gift to you, but you have to promise me something." "What, Grandma?" "Promise me you won't touch it unless you really, truly need it. Not for toys or cars or fun things. Only when you really need it. Promise?" I promise. She'd kissed my forehead. Good boy. 2 years later, she died. A stroke while watching her Sunday morning church program. She was 73. I was 11 and destroyed. At the funeral, wearing a borrowed suit that was too big, I'd thought about that bank account. That promise. It became sacred to me, the last gift from Grandma Betty. Untouchable. A memorial more than money. I'd thought about it over the years. When I went to college, community college, all I could afford, I didn't touch it. When Sarah and I got married, when we needed money for the deposit on our first apartment, I didn't touch it. When Emma was born and the hospital bills piled up, I didn't touch it. When Jake needed braces and we were stretched thin, I didn't touch it. It was Grandma's gift. Sacred. Frozen in time at $300. Now, staring at an eviction notice with $127 to my name, I thought, Grandma, I really need it now. First National Bank had been absorbed by Pacific Trust Bank years ago, but they honored old accounts. I found the nearest branch, 3 bus transfers away, nearly 2 hours of travel, and made the journey on a Thursday morning. The bank was modern, all glass and chrome, nothing like the marble palace I remembered from 1987. It was busy, lunch hour rush. I took a number and waited, the passbook clutched in my sweating hands. The number display cycled through slowly. B47, B48, B49. I was B56. I watched people come and go, young couples applying for mortgages, business people depositing checks, an elderly man arguing about a fee. Everyone looked confident, purposeful, like they belonged in the world of money and banking. I felt like a beggar. Finally, B56. I approached the teller station. A middle-aged woman with kind eyes and auburn hair pulled into a neat bun. Her nameplate read, Patricia Wilson. "Hi," I said, my voice rough. I hadn't talked to anyone in days. "I'd like to close this account, please." I slid the passbook across the counter. Patricia picked it up, opened it, smiled at the date. Oh my goodness, 1987. These old passbooks are like little time capsules. We hardly ever see them anymore. She had a warm voice, motherly. "Let me just pull up your account information." She typed on her keyboard, still smiling. Then her fingers stopped moving. The smile faded. "Is something wrong?" I asked. She didn't answer. Just stared at her screen, her face going pale. Actually pale, the color draining visibly from her cheeks. "Ma'am?" Excuse me, sir. Just one moment, please." Her voice had gone strange, tight and high. She stood abruptly, the passbook still in her hand, and walked quickly to a desk behind the teller line. A man in a suit, late 40s, graying hair, brass nameplate identifying him as a manager, was working at a computer. Patricia leaned down, said something urgent, showed him the passbook. The manager's eyebrows shot up. He said something sharp. I couldn't hear, but his body language was emphatic. Patricia shook her head, said something else, pointed at me. They both looked at me, then at the computer screen, then at each other. My stomach churned. What was happening? Was the account flagged for some reason? Frozen? Some legal issue with my grandmother's estate from 36 years ago? The manager stood, picked up a folder, and they both walked toward the teller window. Patricia's hands were actually shaking. "Mr. Reeves?" the manager asked. "Yes?" "I'm Gerald Morrison, branch manager. Could you come with me to my office, please? We need to verify some information about this account." "Is there a problem?" "No problem, sir. We need to discuss something. Please." My legs felt weak as I followed them past the teller line, through a door marked Employees Only, into a hallway lined with private offices. Morrison opened a door to a glass-walled office with his name on it, gestured for me to sit. Patricia closed the door. They both sat across from me, and they both had these expressions I couldn't quite read. Shock, confusion, something else. "Mr. Reeves," Morrison began carefully, "when this account was opened in 1987, do you recall anything about the setup process, any additional services or programs that were included?" "I was 9, I said. "My grandmother opened it for me. She just put in $300. "Why?" Patricia and Morrison exchanged glances. "Sir," Patricia said gently, "according to our records, and I've verified this 3 times, when this account was opened, it was enrolled in a program we offered in the 1980s called the Youth Investment Builder." "What's that?" Morrison leaned forward. It was a partnership program between the bank and several local companies. The idea was to help young people become long-term investors. The bank would take a small amount from the savings account each month, just a few dollars, and use it to purchase fractional shares of stock in the partner companies. I stared at him. "Stock?" "Yes, sir. The program was designed to be completely automatic. Most people forgot about it entirely. It was set up once and just ran in the background. The amount taken from the savings account was small enough that it wouldn't deplete the principal, especially with the interest being added." "I don't understand. Are you saying I own stock?" Patricia nodded slowly. "Yes, sir. This account has been automatically purchasing shares of a specific company every single month since March 1987. That's 38 years of continuous purchasing, including through 3 major stock splits." My brain struggled to process this. "How much are we talking about?" Morrison turned his computer monitor toward me. At first, the numbers didn't make sense. My eyes couldn't focus on them properly. Shares held, 3,047.33. Current price per share, 412.67. Current value, 1,587 now, 438.91. I stared at the screen. The numbers didn't change. They stayed there. Impossible. Mocking me. That can't be right, I whispered. I understand this is shocking, Patricia said softly, but I've verified it multiple times. The account has been purchasing shares consistently for 38 years. The company has performed very well. There were 3 stock splits, one in 2006, one in 2013, and one in 2019, which multiplied your share count significantly. Plus dividend reinvestment. It all compounds. I couldn't breathe. Literally couldn't get air into my lungs. $1.5 million. I'd come here desperate for $300, hoping it would buy me another week. Time to find something, anything. Instead, Mr. Reeves? Morrison's voice seemed far away. Are you all right? Can I get you some water? The company, I managed. What company? Morrison pointed at the screen, at the company name at the top. I leaned forward, squinting at the text, and the world stopped. Marcus's Café Holdings, Inc. I actually laughed. A short, sharp bark of sound that came out wrong, almost hysterical. No, I said. No, that's impossible. You recognize the company? Patricia asked. I worked there, I heard myself say. For 22 years. I built that company, helped it grow from 1 location to 16. I was director of operations until 3 months ago when they fired me for being too old. The silence in the office was deafening. Morrison and Patricia stared at me, then at each other, then at the screen. Sir, Morrison said carefully, you're telling me you worked for this company? The same company your account has been invested in since 1987? Yes. My grandmother opened this account the year before the company even existed. The original cafe didn't open until 1993. How is that possible? Patricia checked something on the computer. The Youth Investment Builder program partnered with companies that were planning expansions. This company, I'm looking at the historical records now, was a small Seattle-based coffee roaster in the mid-1980s. They were planning to open retail locations. They participated in the program as a way to build a base of small, long-term investors before they went public. My grandmother, my seamstress grandmother who clipped coupons and saved pennies, who'd never owned a stock in her life, who'd never even been to Seattle. She'd somehow enrolled me in a program that invested in the company that would employ me, that I would help build, that would fire me 35 years later. The current value, Morrison said quietly, is $1,587,438. That's approximately 0.4% of the company's outstanding shares. That's a significant ownership stake. Or 0.4%. I owned almost 0.5% of Marcus's Café Holdings. I'd built the company that fired me, and I'd owned a piece of it the entire time. Mr. Reeves? Patricia's voice was gentle. Do you need a moment? I nodded, not trusting my voice. She and Morrison exchanged glances, then quietly left the office, closing the door behind them. I sat alone, staring at the number on the screen. Was 1,087,438. I thought about the eviction notice on my door, the 127ers in my checking account, the child support payments I was behind on, the months of desperation and rejected job applications. I thought about 70-hour weeks for $67,000 a year, about Marcus making $750,000, about Trevor, 29-year-old Trevor with his tech startup background and zero cafe experience, making $185,000 to replace me. I thought about my grandmother's rough hands, the needle pricks, the careful way she'd counted out $300, the way she'd made me promise not to touch it unless I really needed it. I thought about the day Marcus fired me. We need younger energy. I'd walked out of that office 56, broke and broken. Now I was 56, a millionaire, and a shareholder in the company that had destroyed me. I started laughing. Couldn't help it. Started laughing and couldn't stop, tears streaming down my face because the universe had just played the cruelest, most perfect joke imaginable. When Morrison and Patricia came back, I'd composed myself. Mostly. Mr. Reeves, Morrison said, sitting down carefully, I need to ask you something important. What would you like to do with this account? What are my options? Well, you can sell the shares. That would give you immediate liquidity, 1,587,438 tours, minus taxes, of course. Capital gains tax would be significant, but you'd still walk away with over $1 million. $1 million. Enough to solve every financial problem I had, enough to pay child support for years, enough to retire, move somewhere cheap, live modestly, enough to never think about Marcus's Café again. Or, I asked, or you keep the shares. Continue to hold them as an investment. As a shareholder with this many shares, 0.4% of the company, you have certain rights. What kind of rights? Morrison pulled out a folder, extracted some papers. Voting rights on major company decisions, the right to attend shareholder meetings, the right to examine company financials. With a stake this size, you'd have standing to raise concerns about company management or direction. Patricia added, the next annual shareholder meeting is in 6 weeks, July 28th. All shareholders with more than 0.1% ownership are invited to attend in person and have speaking privileges. A shareholder meeting, where Marcus would be, where Vanessa would be, where the board members who'd approved my termination would be, where I could ask questions, raise concerns, where I could speak. Where's the meeting? I asked. At the company headquarters, Morrison said. Here in the city. The building I'd found, the lease I'd negotiated, the offices I'd set up. I thought about Marcus sitting in that corner office, telling me I was too old, that the company needed fresh perspectives. I thought about Vanessa, scrolling through her phone, already dismissing me while I was still in the room. I thought about Trevor, 29 years old, who'd never pulled an espresso shot in his life. I thought about my grandmother's hands, about the promise I'd made, about 38 years of automatic investments I'd never known about. I'd like to keep the shares, I said. Morrison raised his eyebrows. Are you sure? That's a very large amount of money to keep invested in a single company, and given your history with them, I'm sure. May I ask why? I looked at the number on the screen again, at the company name. Because I helped build that company, I said quietly. I sacrificed everything for it, and I'm not going to let them forget it. Patricia smiled, a small, knowing smile. We'll need to update all the account information, Morrison said. Get you set up with proper brokerage access, online account management, proxy voting materials. It'll take a few business days. In the meantime, we can transfer the cash portion of the original savings account to your checking account. Give you some immediate funds. How much is that? Let me check, he typed. The original savings account with compound interest over 38 years currently has a balance of $400. The amount I'd come here for. The amount that would have bought me a few more weeks before homelessness. Now it was pocket change compared to the fortune I'd just discovered, but it would pay tomorrow's bills. Yes, please transfer that. Morrison nodded, made notes. Mr. Reeves, there's one more thing you should know. As a shareholder with more than 0.1% ownership, you'll start receiving quarterly reports, proxy statements, all of the company's SEC filings. You'll see detailed financial information, executive compensation, expansion plans, everything. I'd like to see those. I'll make sure you're added to the distribution list immediately. He paused. The next quarterly report goes out in 2 weeks. It'll include information about potential merger and acquisition activities. M&A activities? Morrison hesitated. I probably shouldn't say more, but you'll see everything in the report. As a shareholder, you're entitled to know. M&A, mergers and acquisitions. Marcus was planning to sell. That's what this was about. The restructuring, the cost-cutting. Replace expensive, experienced employees with cheap young labor. Make the balance sheet look good for a buyer. I'd been fired to make the company more attractive for a sale, and Marcus would profit millions while I collected unemployment. Except now, I'd profit too. 0.4% of whatever sale price Marcus negotiated. But more than that, now I had a voice, a vote, a seat at the table. Patricia was watching me, that small smile still on her face. Mr. Reeves, I've been working in banking for 28 years. I've seen a lot of accounts, a lot of situations. This is one of the most remarkable things I've ever witnessed. Why? Because your grandmother, 38 years ago, gave you exactly what you needed exactly when you needed it. She couldn't have known, couldn't have planned it. But somehow, she provided for you. My throat tightened. I thought about Grandma Betty in her good navy dress, holding my hand in that bank, making me promise, giving me her gift. She was a seamstress, I said. Made $8 an hour, saved for months to put together that $300. She probably had no idea what the Youth Investment Builder program even was. The bank probably just recommended it, and she said yes. Maybe, Patricia said, or maybe she knew more than you think. Maybe she knew that sometimes the best gifts are the ones that grow over time, that wait until they're really needed. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Morrison stood, extended his hand. Congratulations, Mr. Reeves, and good luck. Something tells me that shareholder meeting is going to be interesting. The next 6 weeks were the strangest of my life. The $427 from the old savings account hit my checking account the next day. I paid my rent, bought groceries, caught up on utilities, basic survival sorted, but everything else changed. The brokerage account access arrived by email 3 days later. I logged in, stared at the dashboard showing $1,587,438. Watched it fluctuate day by day, up $3,000 one day, down $2,000 the next. Numbers that would have been life-changing a month ago, now just numbers on a screen. The quarterly report arrived exactly 2 weeks after my bank visit. A thick envelope with Marcus's Café Holdings Inc. Shareholder Report Q2 2025 printed on the outside. I made coffee, real coffee, the good stuff. I could afford it now, though I hadn't quite processed that yet, and sat at my small table to read. The first section was standard stuff: revenue, profit margins, same-store sales comparisons. Q2 revenue was up 7% year over year, decent growth, but slowing from previous quarters. Same-store sales were actually down 3%. That was bad. That meant individual locations were performing worse. The growth was coming from new locations only. I'd been tracking those metrics for 22 years. I knew what they meant. Executive compensation was listed on page 12. Marcus Brennan, CEO and founder. $750,000 base salary, $200,000 performance bonus, stock options worth approximately $1.2 million. Vanessa Brennan, VP of Operations, $280,000 base salary, $75,000 performance bonus. Trevor Singh, Director of Operations, $185,000 base salary, hired March 2025. Other executives I'd worked with for years, $150,000, $400,000 depending on role. My salary the year before I was fired, $67,000. No bonus, no stock options, no performance incentives. I'd made less than a third of what Trevor was making, less than a tenth of what Marcus made, for building the entire operational structure of the company. The rage was cold, sharp. I let myself feel it fully for the first time since that day in March. The report continued. Expansion plans for new markets, technology upgrades, marketing strategies. And then, on page 47, buried in a section titled Strategic Initiatives. The Board of Directors has authorized preliminary discussions with potential strategic partners regarding possible merger or acquisition opportunities. While no definitive agreements have been reached, management believes that a strategic combination could create significant value for shareholders. The board will continue to evaluate opportunities and will update shareholders on any material developments. There it was. Confirmation. Marcus was planning to sell. The man who'd talked about community and connection and building something that matters was preparing to cash out. And the restructuring that had cost me and dozens of other long-term employees our jobs was all about making the company more attractive to buyers. Cut costs, make margins look better, eliminate expensive legacy employees. I pulled up my laptop, started researching. Pinnacle Restaurant Group had been buying up regional cafe chains for years. They'd acquired 6 chains in the last 3 years, always following the same pattern. Buy the company, strip out the local character, standardize everything, cut costs, boost margins for a few years, then sell to an even bigger conglomerate. It was corporate strip mining, and Marcus was preparing to let it happen to the company I'd spent 22 years building. I thought about the original location on 7th and Madison, about Mrs. Chen and her double-shot latte with 2 pumps of vanilla, about Derek the lawyer with his black coffee and blueberry muffin, about Sarah the nurse who came in after night shifts. Pinnacle would fire them all, replace them with cheaper workers who didn't know the regulars' names, would probably close half the locations, keep only the highest performing ones, would gut everything that made Marcus's cafe special, and Marcus would walk away with tens of millions while the employees who'd built it got nothing unless someone stopped him. I kept reading, shareholder reports going back 5 years, SEC filings, articles about the company in business publications. I learned the financial structure, the board composition, the major shareholders. The largest institutional shareholder was Westbridge Capital, with 12% of shares. The next biggest was Mariner Asset Management, with 8%. Marcus himself owned 23%, enough to have significant control, but not enough to unilaterally approve a sale. My 0.4% was tiny in comparison, but it was still a voice. I found more information about shareholder rights, about how voting worked, about the kinds of motions that could be raised at annual meetings. I also found something else, records of recent personnel changes. Since January, Marcus's Café Holdings had terminated 23 employees with an average tenure of 11.5 years. Combined salary savings, approximately $680,000 annually. Replacement employees averaged 4.2 years younger and salaries 35% lower, 23 people. 23 careers destroyed, 23 families impacted, all to make the books look better for Pinnacle. I made a list of names, the ones I could find through LinkedIn and social media, people I'd worked with, trained, hired, good people who'd given years to the company. Maria Rodriguez, fired after 14 years. Jennifer Walsh, fired after 9 years. David Kim, fired after 16 years. Robert Paulson, fired after 12 years. On and on. 23 names, 23 stories like mine. I started calling them. Maria answered on the third ring. Hello? Maria, it's Dan Reeves. Silence. Then, Dan? Oh my God, how are you? I heard they let you go too. And, yeah, March. You? February. Told me they were realigning the management structure. Her voice was bitter. 14 years, Dan. I helped open the Portland locations, trained dozens of managers, and they just tossed me out. Have you found anything? A long pause. I'm working at Starbucks, making $10 an hour less than I made at Marcus's. At 51 years old, starting over as an assistant manager. We talked for an hour. She told me about her son's college tuition, about the medical bills for her husband's diabetes, about how the severance had run out and she was struggling. I called Jennifer next. She was 47, had worked in the San Francisco locations, now unemployed, applying for disability because the stress had triggered severe anxiety and depression. David, Robert, Lisa, each call revealed the same story. Fired, struggling, angry, betrayed. By the time I'd called all 23, I had a clear picture. We hadn't just lost jobs, we'd lost careers, identities, futures, and Marcus was going to profit millions from it. There's a shareholder meeting in 3 weeks, I told each of them. I'm going to be there. I'm going to say something. Good, Maria said. Someone needs to. Make him look you in the eye. I bought a suit from Goodwill 3 days before the meeting. Navy blue, slightly worn but still respectable. Had it altered to fit my thinner frame. I'd lost 30 pounds since March, couldn't afford to eat regularly. The night before the meeting, I couldn't sleep, lay in bed rehearsing what I'd say, how I'd frame it. I needed to be factual, not emotional, professional, not angry. But I was so angry. I got up at 4 a.m., old habits, and made coffee. Watched the sunrise through my studio apartment window. Thought about my grandmother. Only when you really need it, she'd said. I needed this. The meeting was at 10 a.m. I caught the bus at 8:30, arrived at the headquarters building by 9:15, gave myself time to prepare. The security guard in the lobby was new, young guy, maybe 25. He didn't recognize me. I'm here for the shareholder meeting, I said, showing my proxy documentation. He checked the list, nodded, gave me a visitor badge. 10th floor, conference room A. The elevator ride up felt surreal. I'd been in this building hundreds of times. Had meetings on this floor. Knew where the bathrooms were, where the coffee station was, which conference rooms had the good chairs. Now I was a visitor. The conference room was larger than I remembered. Set up theater style, maybe 50 chairs in rows, all facing a presentation screen at the front. A long table faced the audience, where Marcus, Vanessa, and 5 board members would sit. About 30 people were already there, scattered through the seats. Mostly older folks, retirees living on dividends, a few younger people in suits, probably representing investment funds. Everyone had that comfortable look of people who belonged in rooms where money was discussed. I took a seat in the back row, heart hammering. More people filed in. By 9:55, maybe 40 people total. Small turnout. Most shareholders didn't bother attending annual meetings. At exactly 10 a.m., Marcus walked in, followed by Vanessa and the board members. He looked good, tan, relaxed, confident, wearing an expensive suit, probably the same one he'd worn when he fired me. He was smiling, shaking hands with some of the shareholders in the front rows. Vanessa was on her phone, as always. She wore a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. None of them looked toward the back of the room. Marcus took his seat at the center of the table, adjusted the microphone. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for Marcus's Cafe Holdings 2025 Annual Shareholder Meeting. I'm Marcus Brennan, CEO and founder. With me today are our board members and my daughter Vanessa, our VP of Operations. Vanessa gave a small wave, didn't look up from her phone. Marcus launched into a presentation. PowerPoint slides showing revenue growth, new locations, market expansion. All the numbers I'd read in the quarterly reports, dressed up with graphs and charts. As you can see, we've had an excellent year, Marcus said, clicking to a slide showing profit margins. Revenue is up 7%, we've opened 4 new locations, and we're positioned for continued growth. He didn't mention the 3% decline in same-store sales. Didn't mention the 23 terminated employees. Didn't mention the acquisition talks. The presentation lasted 30 minutes. Professional, polished, carefully crafted to show only the positive. When it ended, Marcus smiled at the audience. Now we'll open the floor for questions. Are there any shareholders who'd like to speak? My hand shot up. Marcus's eyes swept the room, landed on me. The smile froze on his face. The color drained from his cheeks. He stared at me, and I saw the moment of recognition. The shock. The confusion. Vanessa followed his gaze, her phone forgotten. Her mouth actually fell open. The room went silent. Yes, Marcus said, his voice tight. Gentleman in the back? I stood. Every eye in the room turned to me. My hands were shaking, but my voice came out steady. Daniel Reeves, shareholder. I have several questions about operational decisions made in the last 6 months, specifically regarding personnel restructuring and its impact on long-term company stability. Absolute silence. One of the board members, an older woman I recognized as Janet Chen, former CEO of a retail chain, leaned forward, interested. Marcus's jaw clenched. Mr. Reeves, I didn't realize you were a shareholder. 0.4% ownership, I said. 3,847 shares. I've been invested in this company since 1987, since before it went public. In fact, I've been invested longer than you've been CEO. A murmur went through the room. I'd like to ask about the restructuring you mentioned in the Q2 report. Can you explain the projected cost savings versus the loss of institutional knowledge and employee expertise? Marcus exchanged glances with Vanessa. She'd gone pale. The restructuring was necessary to streamline operations and position the company for future growth. What growth? Same-store sales are down 3% according to your own report. Customer satisfaction scores have dropped 12 points since January. Employee turnover is up 34%. Those metrics are all declining, not growing. Janet Chen was taking notes now. Other board members were paying attention. Those are short-term fluctuations, are they? Because the restructuring involved terminating 23 employees with an average tenure of 11.5 years. Combined salary savings of $680,000 annually, all replaced with less experienced personnel making 35% less. That doesn't sound like streamlining. That sounds like cost-cutting. Every business makes difficult decisions. And were those decisions made in preparation for a potential acquisition? Because your Q2 report mentions preliminary discussions with strategic partners. Is this company being sold? The murmur became conversation. Several shareholders sat up straighter. Marcus's face went red. That information is confidential. It's in your public SEC filing, page 47. Not confidential at all. Shareholders have a right to know if their investment is being sold, and we have a right to question whether short-term cost-cutting is damaging long-term value. Another board member, Carl Mitchell, I knew him, spoke up. Marcus, are we in active acquisition talks? We're always exploring strategic opportunities. That's a yes, I said. There are active negotiations with Pinnacle Restaurant Group. They've acquired 6 regional chains in the last 3 years. Their playbook is buy, strip assets, standardize, and resell. Is that what you want for this company? Janet Chen looked at Marcus. Is this true? Marcus looked trapped, furious. We have had preliminary conversations with several interested parties. Nothing is finalized. We're just exploring options to maximize shareholder value. At what cost? I asked. I worked for this company for 22 years. I was director of operations. I helped build every system, train every manager, open every location. I worked 70-hour weeks. I sacrificed my marriage, my health, my relationship with my children. My voice was shaking now, but I didn't stop. In March, you called me into your office and told me I was too old, that you needed younger energy. You fired me after 22 years and replaced me with someone making 3 times my salary who's never worked a cafe shift in his life. Vanessa started to stand. Mr. Reeves, this is inappropriate. What's inappropriate is systematically terminating experienced employees in their 50s to make your balance sheet look better for a sale. What's inappropriate is enriching yourself with a $750,000 salary plus bonuses while paying the people who actually run your cafés a fraction of that. What's inappropriate is betraying every principle you claimed to stand for when we started this company. The room was dead silent. Marcus stood, his hands flat on the table. Mr. Reeves, I understand you're upset about your termination, but this meeting is not the forum. This is exactly the forum. Oh, I'm a shareholder. I'm exercising my right to question management decisions that affect company value. and I'm informing this board and these shareholders that current management is prioritizing short-term profits and a quick sale over long-term stability and the values this company was built on. Carl Mitchell spoke up. These are serious allegations. Do you have documentation? I have personnel records showing 23 terminations since January. I have financial records showing the salary savings. I have customer satisfaction data showing declining scores. I have turnover reports showing increased employee attrition. And I have your own Q2 report confirming acquisition discussions. It's all public record. Janet Chen was writing furiously. 2 other board members were whispering to each other. Marcus looked panicked. The board has approved all major decisions. These restructuring efforts were necessary. Were we informed of the magnitude? Janet asked sharply. 23 terminations in 6 months? That's 15% of the management staff. Marcus hesitated. It was part of our cost optimization strategy, which we approved without full disclosure of the scope, Janet said, her voice hardening. I move that we table any acquisition discussions pending a full management review and analysis of recent personnel decisions. Seconded, Carl said immediately. This is unnecessary, Marcus started. All in favor? Janet asked. 4 of the 7 board members raised their hands. Marcus stared at them, then at me, his face a mix of rage and disbelief. Motion carries, Janet said firmly. Marcus, we'll need to schedule a special board meeting to review these concerns in detail. This meeting is adjourned. The room erupted into conversation. Shareholders turned to each other, voices rising. Several people approached the board members with questions. I stood in the back, heart racing, hands shaking from adrenaline. I'd done it. I'd actually done it. Marcus pushed through the crowd toward me, Vanessa right behind him. His face was furious. Dan, he said, voice low and harsh. What the hell was that? That was me using my rights as a shareholder. You ambushed me, blindsided me with facts? With public information from your own reports? I didn't ambush you, Marcus. I asked legitimate questions about company management. You had no right. I have every right. I own 0.4% of this company. I've owned it since before you took it public, and I'm not going to watch you destroy it for a quick payout. Vanessa spoke up, her voice sharp. You're just bitter about being fired. This is revenge. This is accountability, I said, something you've never experienced. Marcus stepped closer, his voice dropping. Dan, please, let's talk about this privately. We can work something out. If this is about the severance, maybe we can... This isn't about money, Marcus. It's about principle, about the people you've betrayed, about the company we built together that you're throwing away. I built this company. We built it, I said firmly. You had the vision. I did the work for 22 years, and you threw me away like I was nothing. He stared at me, and for a moment I saw something in his eyes. Guilt, maybe, or regret. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I am. The decision to let you go wasn't easy, but you made it anyway. And now you're making decisions that hurt everyone who built this with us. All those fired employees, all the remaining staff watching their colleagues get replaced with cheaper labor, all the customers who built relationships with our baristas and managers. Business isn't about feelings. Yes, it is, I said. That's what you taught me. When we opened the first location, you talked about community and connection. You said we weren't just selling coffee, we were creating spaces where people belonged. Remember? He looked away. What happened to you, Marcus? When did you stop caring? I do care. You care about the exit strategy, about cashing out, not about the company we built, not about the people who built it with us. Vanessa tugged at his arm. Dad, let's go. He's not worth it. Marcus looked at me one more time, and I saw it clearly now. The man I'd worked with for 22 years was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. What do you want? He asked, his voice tired. I want you to do the right thing. Run this company properly. Take care of the employees, build for the long term. If you can do that, I'll support you. If you can't, I'll vote against you at every opportunity. And the acquisition? That depends. If it's the right partner, done the right way, protects jobs and preserves what we built, maybe. If it's Pinnacle coming in to strip mine the company, I'll fight it with every share I own. He nodded slowly. We'll talk. After the board review. I'll be waiting. They left. The room was emptying. Janet Chen approached me, extended her hand. Mr. Reeves. That took courage. Thank you for bringing these issues to our attention. You didn't know, she smiled wryly. We knew some of it, but Marcus has a way of presenting information that, let's say, it emphasizes certain aspects over others. The full scope of the terminations wasn't clear to us. Neither was the magnitude of the acquisition talks. Will you actually review it? Absolutely, and I'll be calling you. We'll need your documentation, your testimony, any information you can provide about operations and personnel decisions. Whatever you need. She handed me her business card. I've been on this board for 3 years, and I've had concerns about the direction we were heading. You've given us the impetus to act on those concerns. Thank you. After she left, I stood alone in the empty conference room, looking at the table where Marcus had sat. This was where decisions had been made. This was where my termination had been approved. This was where the acquisition discussions happened. And now I had a voice in this room. My phone buzzed. A text from Maria Rodriguez. Dan, I don't know what you did, but a board member just called me asking about my termination. What happened? I smiled. Just exercise my rights as a shareholder, I texted back. The next 3 months were a whirlwind. The board review happened, I provided documentation, gave testimony, connected them with other terminated employees. Maria, Jennifer, David, they all told their stories. The board discovered that Marcus had been less than forthcoming about the scope and reasoning for the restructuring, that the acquisition talks were much farther along than he'd disclosed, that several decisions had been made without full board approval. Janet Chen called me personally to update me. We're implementing significant changes. Marcus will remain as CEO, but with enhanced oversight. We're requiring board approval for all major personnel and acquisition decisions. We're also conducting an independent review of the Pinnacle discussions. What about the fired employees? We're offering reinstatement to anyone who wants it, at their previous salary plus adjustment for time lost. For those who've moved on and don't want to return, we're offering enhanced severance packages. And the operations position? A pause. Trevor Singh's contract is being terminated. We need someone with actual operational experience, someone who understands the business from the ground up. Are you offering me the job? Not exactly. The board feels that given the complicated history, it might be better to bring in an outside candidate for the director role. But we'd like you to consult. Advisor to operations, reporting directly to the board, part-time, $150,000 annually with stock options. I thought about it. Part-time meant 20 hours a week instead of 70. Meant time to rebuild relationships with Emma and Jake. Meant consulting, advising, but not drowning in day-to-day operations. I'll do it, I said. 6 months later, I was having coffee at the flagship location, the original cafe on 7th and Madison, when Marcus walked in. We hadn't spoken since the shareholder meeting. He'd been avoiding me, which was fine. I'd been busy working with the new operations director, helping restructure systems, bringing back some of the humanity that had been stripped out. Customer satisfaction scores were up. Employee turnover was down. Same-store sales were recovering. Marcus got in line, ordered a coffee, then spotted me at my usual table in the corner. He hesitated, then walked over. Mind if I sit? I gestured to the empty chair. We sat in awkward silence for a moment, both of us drinking coffee. The Pinnacle deal fell through, he finally said. I heard. Board voted it down. 5-2. How'd you vote? He smiled slightly. Against, actually. After the review, after talking to the board, they were right. It was the wrong move for the wrong reasons. So what's next? We're rebuilding. Slower growth, focus on quality and culture. Janet's been pushing for profit sharing with employees, and ESOP, employee stock ownership plan. That's good. It was your idea, wasn't it? You suggested it to Janet. I mentioned it, I admitted. Seemed like a way to give employees a real stake in the company. Marcus nodded, stared into his coffee. I'm sorry, Dan, for how I treated you, for forgetting what we built together, for letting the money and growth blind me to what actually mattered. Why'd you do it? He sighed. Vanessa kept pushing. The consultants kept telling me to scale, to sell, to maximize the exit. I started seeing employees as line items instead of people, stopped remembering their names, stopped caring about the community we'd created. And now? Now I'm trying to remember, trying to get back to who I was when we started. I pulled something from my pocket. An old photograph, worn and creased. Marcus and me in front of the original location, 22 years ago. Both of us grinning, arms around each other's shoulders. You gave me this at our 10-year anniversary party, I said. Said I was your partner in all but name, your brother in the coffee trenches. Marcus took the photo, stared at it. His eyes got glassy. I'm sorry I forgot that, he whispered. Don't apologize to me. Apologize to Maria Rodriguez, to Jennifer Walsh, to all the people we worked with who deserved better. I have been, calling each of them personally. Good. We sat in silence again, but it was more comfortable now. "How are Emma and Jake?" Marcus asked. He'd met them a few times over the years. "Better. I'm seeing them more now. Actually showed up for Emma's birthday last month. First time in 5 years." "Yeah?" She cried. Said she couldn't believe I was actually there. That hurt more than anything. Marcus nodded. "Vanessa and I are working on our relationship too. She got too caught up in the business school mentality. All about optimization and efficiency, forgot that we're dealing with human beings." "Is she still VP of operations?" "For now. But she's shadowing the new director, learning how to actually run a cafe. Made her work a full week at each location. She lasted 3 hours before calling me crying about how hard it was." I laughed. Couldn't help it. Marcus laughed too. "You know what my grandmother said when she opened that account for me?" I asked. "She said it was for my future. Said I shouldn't touch it unless I really needed it." "She gave you quite a gift." "She gave me more than she knew. Not just the money. The lesson. About investing in what matters. About patience. About being there when people need you. Wish I'd met her." "Me too. I think you would have liked her, and she would have kicked your ass for firing me." Marcus laughed again, genuine this time. "Probably." He stood, extended his hand. "Thank you, Dan, for not giving up, for fighting, for caring enough to make me face what I'd become." I shook his hand. "Thank you for listening." My grandmother's account is worth $1.7 million now. The stock keeps rising, slowly and steadily. I don't plan to sell. Emma and Jake visit every month. We're rebuilding what I broke. It's slow, awkward sometimes, but we're trying. Sarah sent me an email last week. Just a short note. "The kids say you're different, calmer, present. I'm glad you figured it out. Better late than never." She's right. Better late than never. I keep the old passbook in my desk drawer at home, next to that photograph of Marcus and me, next to the rosary beads my grandmother gave me. Sometimes I take them out, hold them, think about her rough hands and careful savings, about how she couldn't have known that $300 would change my life twice, once when it was invested, once when I discovered it. She taught me something I'd forgotten, that loyalty and hard work matter, but not at the expense of yourself, that you have to invest in your own future, not just someone else's dream, that your worth isn't determined by what someone else decides to pay you. Last week, I was at the original cafe, and Mrs. Chen came in for her usual order. "Double shot latte, 2 pumps vanilla," she said. Then she looked at me, did a double take. "Dan, is that you?" "Hi, Mrs. Chen." "Oh my God, I heard you left. What are you doing here?" "Working part-time, consulting." She grabbed my hands. "I'm so glad. Things weren't the same without you. Tell me, who's that new kid they had? He didn't know anyone's orders. Kept messing up my coffee." "He's gone. We've got better people now." She beamed. Good. This place is special, Dan. Don't let them ruin it." "I won't." After she left, I stood behind the counter for a moment, breathing in the familiar smells, coffee and cinnamon and steam. This was home. This was what I'd built. And now, finally, I was building something else too. A relationship with my kids, a life outside of work, a future that was actually mine. My grandmother's future fund had given me everything I needed, just like she'd promised. The shareholder meeting this year was different. Marcus stood at the front, but this time his presentation included photos of employees, stories of customers, talk about community investment and sustainable growth. When it came time for questions, several hands went up. Mine wasn't one of them. Janet Chen gave me a small nod from the board table. The questions were normal, positive, no ambushes this time. At the end, Marcus said, "Before we adjourn, I want to acknowledge someone in the room. Dan Reeves is one of our shareholders and our operations consultant. Dan, would you stand?" I stood, uncomfortable with the attention. "This company exists because of people like Dan," Marcus said. "People who believed in the vision, who worked impossible hours, who sacrificed for something bigger than themselves. I forgot that for a while. We all did. But we're committed to remembering, to building a company that deserves the loyalty and dedication that people like Dan have given us." People clapped. Not thunderous applause, just genuine appreciation. I sat down, face burning. After the meeting, as people filed out, a young woman approached me. She looked nervous, holding a resume folder. "Mr. Reeves, I'm Angela. I'm interviewing for an assistant manager position. I just wanted to say, I heard about what you did at last year's meeting. About standing up. That took guts." "Just ask some questions," I said. No, you did more than that. You reminded people that companies are made of people, not just numbers. That's the kind of place I want to work. That's why I'm applying. She shook my hand and left. I stood there, watching people stream out of the conference room, and thought about circles. 38 years ago, my grandmother had invested $300 in my future. 22 years ago, I'd started working at Marcus's cafe. 6 months ago, I'd discovered that those two circles overlapped. Now I was helping build something better. Not perfect, not ideal, but better. And somewhere, I like to think, Grandma Betty was watching, her calloused hands folded in her lap, smiling at the unexpected path her simple gift had taken. "Thank you, Grandma," I whispered. I left the building, stepped out into the sunshine, and for the first time in 22 years, I had nowhere I had to be. I decided to get coffee. The good stuff from a local roaster I'd discovered. Not Marcus's cafe, just different. Life was good, finally.